You may have heard part of the Hermetic phrase, as above, so below, as below, so above, which basically means what exists in the universe exists within us. And as we begin our spiritual journey, we really see this at work in our lives. So if we've never taken notice of the signs before awakening, we definitely take notice afterwards. We begin to see things in repetition, and often these signs are presented to us in an unusual way. Like a song, for example. A lot of times they aren't brand new songs you would normally hear on repeat. I mean, they can be, but I would hear a certain song over and over in a period of a few days, and I might hear it on the radio one time, then I might hear it in a movie, or hear it in the store, or see the title somewhere, or a reference to the meaning of the song. They can come in all kinds of ways and they'll just be repetitive. But these signs would almost always be accompanied by synchronicities, repeating numbers, which you may have heard them called angel numbers. And all of this happens in such a way for us to take notice, to pay attention to the messages there. After I started really opening to my intuition more, I would sometimes hear a direct message from my higher self. This song is for you. Then a song would start, and I would really listen to the lyrics because I trusted it as a sign for my journey. And at first, I took almost every song or sign as a message from my twin or something to do with them. But there was a certain point in my journey where the energy really shifted, and I was actually told by my higher self that we would be, quote unquote, trading places. It was so noticeable that I named it the boomerang effect because of the way the energy came back around to me. And I was told to take those signs and apply them to myself. And actually, it started with my higher self telling me to take the songs I'd gotten, everything that I had taken as a message from my twin or something to do with my twin, and take that and apply it to myself. So all that love I had for my twin through songs and signs, I applied to myself. And I didn't notice signs until the obsessive energy of the activation stage began to calm down. According to my specific journey, 3 months after we'd met, we had a reunion, which was when I started noticing signs. And right before a reunion, I had what I call the scream dream. And it wasn't a dream exactly, at least I don't remember a dream. I only remember screaming his name out like a blood curdling, life or death kind of scream. And it was in my head while I was asleep, but it jolted me awake. And I remember looking over at the clock, and it was 4:40 a.m. And it really shook me. I had trouble falling back asleep because I just had that feeling shivering throughout my whole body. It was just so chilling. And this was my first dream of him, if you can even call it a dream, but I hadn't seen him since the only time we met, which was when our soul was awakened to our shared soul frequency. But a month prior to this dream, we chatted and he was supposed to come over and he failed to show up like we'd planned. And he didn't text me and I didn't text him either. Like we'd had issues with that in the beginning, but he didn't even bother with an excuse this time. And after that, we didn't talk or text. We didn't have any contact whatsoever until a month later when I had the dream. And he showed up the next morning and he was carrying a gun. And it was like he heard me scream his name and had to see that I was okay. And at least that's how I took it. And I've had other significant dreams, and some involved him and some didn't. But one showed me something that was about to happen rather symbolically, and it did happen a few days later. And the incident taught me to trust in such a way that it obliterated any doubt I had about being on this journey with him. And another thing we might experience can be astral projecting, which I don't really know a lot about. Um, I experienced slow time both times I met my twin, but I don't know if that's considered astral. It definitely felt supernatural. It was very obvious. But I know that it happened so that that moment would stand out to me. Like the first time was actually during sex when I was orgasming. And honestly, I'm still not really sure what to think about that, except that I take the twin flame dynamic as being part of a sacred, sexual, sensual, like the most high spiritual energy kind of experience we can have with another being. I've always considered the orgasm to be something spiritual and actually mentioned it in a book I published back in 2011, where the character talked about orgasms lengthening the human lifespan, promoting healing. And I do believe that. But I think that moment was to show me the unique, one of a kind bond we have, and that it's a deeply loving and sacred bond. And leave a comment if you have any thoughts about this. I'd love to hear different takes on that. But the other illusion of slow time was during our reunion. And when he was leaving, time slowed for just a few seconds. He suddenly appeared to be about the same height as me. And I'm about 5'3", he's 6'2". So this really made me take notice. In that moment, he had this terrified look on his face when he looked at me, like he was slowly stepping to the front door, and his expression was so drastic. After he left, I really tried to explore what that could mean. And what I got from that was that he felt small and insignificant, unworthy, and not good enough. And also, the way that he appeared to be the same height as me was not only showing me the way he felt, but mirroring for me to also look at myself. And it was true. I often faked my confidence. I never felt like I could be loved. I was absolutely afraid he would think those things about me, like I wasn't who he wanted and all the differences between us and so on. And that wasn't just with him, that was with every relationship I'd ever had. Like that was what always tore my relationships down, was that I didn't have any confidence. I just believed that I couldn't be loved. This was when I began addressing self love. When I first started finding twin flame info online, I had heard self love mentioned, but at that time, I didn't understand the journey. When I finally started opening myself to the idea of practicing self love, I had just come to accepting that this is more than this person, this other person, and that it was a call for me to align with my soul. So, a lot of that stuff about self love, I just didn't give much attention to. But I remember it very clearly at that point. I remember thinking, what the hell, I'll give it a try. Like, I just had no idea what was about to go down in my life or go up in terms of ascension. So I started small, just made myself stop thinking and saying negative things about myself. I started buying myself flowers every couple of weeks because I'm a big flower lover. I've always been into flower gardening, but I started wearing jewelry and giving a little more attention to my appearance. And I'm not one who really wears makeup. I mean, I think it's a form of artistic expression and it can be fun to do whatever for myself, at least, like I think it's fun to change your look sometimes, but I'm not one who has to look a certain way to try to make myself always appear a certain way to others. Like, I know some people that will not leave the house if they are not completely made up. Like, and that's okay, that's them. But for me, I want people to see the real me, to like me or accept me at least for who I am. So, in my own way, to help me feel good about doing the things that I like to do for myself, I started giving some attention there. And then gradually, other things happened that went a little deeper with that. But the appearance of him being so much smaller, I believe I was being shown that deeper level wounding. And having had that come from my childhood, mostly from my parents, he likely did too. And I do believe reunions are meant to show us the really big things we need to focus on. Like, reunions really stand out to us. So everything we get, the numbers, the signs, the dreams, the songs, they all have meaning. And each time I had something noticeable happen, often mind-blowing things happen, I journaled them, and it just kept proving over to me again and again that I was being shown just how divinely designed this is. And it's taking us beyond what we're normally used to being involved in, which is the physical. To see something like that both times I encountered him, for me, this was the start of accepting my spiritual journey. And that pushed me into seeing that this is actually really happening. Then there were other things to follow the self love, like telepathy started. And almost immediately, I got a song that I knew, but I couldn't recognize it. We were having a telepathic conversation. And I remember saying, that's not me anymore. Whatever it was he said, I was like, that's not me anymore. And immediately he sang Dead and Gone by T.I. and Justin Timberlake. And I couldn't recognize it. Like, I could hear him singing the tune. And then he said Dead and Gone, but it was very light, like Dead and Gone. And I was like, I still didn't catch it, but I know that song. What is it? And I was at work at the time, so I couldn't look it up, but I did later, and I thought, wow, how appropriate, because the old me is dead and gone. At least some of the big things I had been dealing with, I had just gone through what is commonly referred to as the ego death. And I believe I experienced a big ego death years prior to meeting my twin flame. But for me, this was another round, but it wasn't as intense. I think it was just tidying up bits and pieces. But I was having doubts about the whole telepathy thing. So part of myself explained it as my mind pulling up the song, but it was just everything that happened. And with other telepathic communications, I was open to it, though I did still have some doubts. But the reason why I felt this was a topic for a video in itself in this series is because this is a big part of our journey, especially early on, where it all comes in heavily. And I think that's because we experience such immense growth during this time. So much happens, and you know it's not coincidence or that you're not making it up. This brings us to trusting. And I started really seeing all of this right after the reunion. And this was the start of my spiritual growth. And it wasn't too long afterwards that I began meditating and I got downloads and visions, messages about our shared soul and other things to do with my journey, like how this is spiritual and physical and how that represents union for our shared soul. This is something that has been shown to me in so many ways again and again. And it's to the point where it leaves no doubt in my mind because my mind, of course, is going to try to analyze everything, such as, that he and I share our soul and that we are eternal. But it just really brought me to trusting that this is divinely designed for the both of us. And I can't speak for others, but I know for me, a lot of times when these signs would occur, I would just end up in tears because it would be so incredible, but especially the message behind them would encourage me. It would help me to keep moving forward with love. And even months ago, I had gotten some songs where the message was consistently about letting go. I mean, for a long time, I had been getting let go, in different ways. Mostly, I just hear it straight through my intuition, let go, just that subtle, gentle voice, let go. But to hear it in a song was a little bit scary. And it was in quite a few songs. And so I'm like, okay, this message is coming in hard for me, hard and heavy for me. I really, really need to completely surrender. And it seemed it was more than surrendering. It seemed like it was more about telling me to move on. And I admitted to myself that I was still giving too much focus to believing, a certain thing. I had, an idea that he's going to show up at my door one day. Even though I had let go of specific ideas, I still had those general expectations. And I can't say that I know what moving on means exactly, except to live my life. But I trust that it's for my greatest good. One song I kept getting over and over in a period of a few days, and it's not a new song, which is Stop and Stare by OneRepublic. And I'll link all references below. But I had heard it when it first came out long ago. I never knew what it was about. And even when I was trying to really listen to the lyrics, I still had to look up the meaning. But it is literally about being stuck in a rut and making the change to do things you've always wanted to do, to live your life. And I've been trying to plan a trip to California to see the redwoods. So, another older song I had heard around this time, and it was funny to me because I hadn't taken it as a sign. I heard it one day, then a couple days later, I was in my car and I had actually just gotten the message from the Stop and Stare song. And I heard in my head, "This song is for you," and a song started playing. And it was California Love by Tupac. So it was one of those mind blown kind of moments. And I had to just laugh in amazement. And I'm like, okay, I got it. But yes, signs are a big part of the journey, and they're often accompanied by repeating numbers. And I see those pretty much every day. Movies, just something someone will say, and I'll know it's meant for me. And I'm not even looking for things most times, but they'll catch my attention. And I'll acknowledge them and recognize what's happening there. And, what is it that I'm thinking about in that moment? And I make a mental note of what's being shown or confirmed. So please, if you enjoy this, leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to keep up with my channel. And thank you for watching.